Today on the Star Trek Critic, we poke fun at the Irish. Yes! Don't cheer too much. Up the Long Ladder loses its first point for being racially insensitive. I have Irish roots and found the show amusing. However, if you have Irish roots and found it offensive, I understand. Now, if you're one of those woke liberals looking to be offended on other people's behalf just so you get attention for yourself, we're going to make fun of you next, again and again and again. Another point lost for a visible boom mic in the reflection. Worf has really bad diarrhea and can barely hold it any longer and stay at his position. The Enterprise is going to respond to a distress call. They believe it to be the first baseman. Jean-Luc performs a Picard maneuver twice. 1 point is lost for calling the European hegemony the first stirrings of world government. That's been going on for thousands of years. The Babylonians and Romans would disagree with them. Keep your eye on these years as still over 100 years into the future. Minus 1 point for Data not pushing any buttons to contact the doctor. And Worf's diarrhea got the best of him. He stayed at his post to the end. Minus 1 point, this planet is moving sideways but not rotating. Minus 1 point for Diana Muldaur not being listed as a regular on the show. Today you learn Klingons don't faint, but Klingon measles is a contagious disease and it's way too unlikely anyone on the ship has been in contact with that disease, so minus 1 point. Minus 1 point for Dr. Pulaski letting any medical information out, even though this one is fake. Minus 1 point for there being a record of a manifest, but not the launch of a spaceship. If any record's gonna get lost, it would be the manifest. Minus 1 point for opening credits 7 minutes into the show. The Mariposa sets sail in 100 years. Data is foreshadowing. The Mariposa manifest has computers and spinning wheels, but the two colonies did not split them evenly, so minus 1 point. They would have not been so separate to begin with. Also in the movie First Contact, World War III was in the 2050s. This would be a fourth world war, so 1 point is lost for the fuzzy timeline. Always look out for someone promoting a simpler way of life. They are cult leaders that are going to be dictators someday. Worf thanks Dr. Pulaski by performing the tea ceremony with her. Aww. Dr. Pulaski falls in love with Worf, who excels in reading love poetry. Of course, whenever a Klingon male reads love poetry, you know sex is sure to follow. They always cut to external shots of the Enterprise when couples are having sex. Data says I number 1. The next point is lost for black squares on the back panels to prevent any reflections that never work. This I'd like to know as well. What happened to all that technology? Why did it only go to the other planet? It has actually been 242 years. But even after that much time, rejecting technology does not mean you are unsophisticated, so minus 1 point. The next point is lost. After 240 years, there'll be way more than just 200 people down there. Worf says you can only use a transporter between flares, so minus 1 point for not using the shuttles. Minus 1 point for Riker going down alone, and minus 1 point since several hours would have passed during the commercial break for Riker to talk to Adele about beaming them up, not just a few minutes like they're acting. Riker says eyes number 2 and 3. Look closely, 1 point lost for the boom mic in the reflection, and that's Picard maneuver number 3. 1 point is lost because you can hear the goat before it beams in. Shout out to Cole Meany for keeping his bearing. He did not find the Irish stereotypes amusing. And this is the first expectant mom on the Next Generation. Picard is wondering, where is that music coming from? Minus 1 point for not beaming them straight to the cargo bay in the first place. O'Brien says I number 4. Poor O'Brien's thinking, it looks like the writers watched Darby O'Gill and the Little People one too many times. This little girl is blessed as being one of the few Star Trek extras who gets to run through the hallways with a chicken. Worf scares Odell so much his hat just magically disappears. Odell should know military commanders don't own their spaceships, so minus 1 point. Odell is way too quick to marry off his daughter, but the point I'm going to take is that one door says Deck 36 while the other says Deck 10. The next point is lost since there is no indication that the Bringloidi were assigned quarters. The Enterprise has plenty of rooms to transport refugees and colonists since that's what the ship is built for. Minus 1 point for not having a liaison down there to show them the food dispensers and to tell them you don't set fires on a spaceship. The Bringloidi have 18th century technology but left Earth in the 22nd, so minus 1 point for 400 years magically being lost. And of course, Worf always gets the best lines. Oh look, Riker is thinking, Hey, I get lit in this episode, don't I? As usual, when Picard sees a woman, his response is, Now the next point is lost since these two actors profiling Irish are actually British. That's just a slap in the face. Supposedly this was not in the script, but Patrick Stewart is currently thinking, we're gonna get cancelled after this show for sure. And again, the Bringloidi know nothing about technology, do they? Irish farmers of today are more advanced than the Bringloidi, so somewhere along the line they must have rejected technology completely, or the writers are really just bad at making this show. Riker says, I'm gonna stay and try and get into her pants. And strangely, it works. Either she's really hard up, or she's gonna blackmail him for a whole bunch of cash. Picard says, she's very much like a Klingon woman. Then Worf says, well, that's my line, sir. Now Odell brings up the other colony. When did she change her clothes? So, minus one more point. Brenna calls Will Riker out on his deep, dark secret. Now you know why Deanna dumped him. I'm sure the trombone standing upright is a metaphor for something, but I do have to take a point for conduct unbecoming a first officer. O'Brien was so offended by the show he refused to show the British actors portraying Irish how to get real alcohol. Minus 1 point for a Trek anomaly. This is the only time you can get real alcohol out of the food dispensers. Minus 1 point, he would ask for a specific type of whiskey. If this show was a little bit longer, Worf and Adele would probably try to drink each other under the table. So how much time has passed since the last scene? Did she actually talk to Dr. Pulaski? Or just say that to hide the fact she was making out with Riker? Worf calls her the second baseman. Minus 1 point, this planet is actually a reverse image of Graves' world from the Schizoid Man. Minus 1 point, Wesley is not in this episode at all. So it's implied their communications technology isn't good enough to reach back to Earth. Incredible, he actually takes Deanna Troy's advice this time. Look closely, not only are the people on this planet clones, but they only have one statue over and over again. And here is another headless clone statue. How many do they have? Shout out to Dr. Pulaski for picking up on their problem instantly. Yes! Minus 1 point since the stars aren't moving in the background. This is the second time someone says 300 years has passed when it was only 242, so minus 1 point. The writers really need a calculator in the writer's room. Cloning was a good idea at the time, but then they made it illegal to have sex and make babies the old-fashioned way. What a horrible way to live. They now find sexual reproduction stomach-churning, and Riker's thinking, well, I'm not going down there now, that's not going to be any fun. I'm not a scientist, but my instinct is that they would have already faded by now. Prime Minister Granger's request is a horrible one. A planet full of clones has to be boring. Riker declines, saying one Will Riker is unique, but Trek's got a surprise for him in about 4 years. Laura Roslin has a solution for them.
We need to start having babies.
1 point is lost since there's no indication he met with Odell right away. Of course, that would have solved all the problems and the next scene would have never taken place. I wouldn't be surprised if they asked Riker if he wanted to have sex with all the clones. He probably would have said, hell yeah. The next point is lost because Riker looks at the camera right before he goes through the door. They don't say how much time has passed, but I'm guessing it's been a couple of hours. Geordi comes in and lets them know his dirty secret. He can tell with his visor when humans are lying. Both Pulaski and Riker are thinking, that's why he's so good at the poker table. We're never playing with him again. Minus 1 point here, Pulaski does not turn the scanner around when she scans herself. 1 point is lost here. No matter how sophisticated their cloning system is, it would have taken longer than just a few hours for them to be this far along. They might have just destroyed somebody else's clones. Granger probably would have waited until the Enterprise left before they cloned these two. Dr. Pulaski says the clones are going to have their own TV show. Riker's correct, they might have stolen samples from the other engineers. This comment really sparks controversy in the pro-life, pro-choice debate. This might be the only show that covers abortion and mocks the Irish at the same time. Deanna says, come on guys, give them a break. We can drop the Bringloidi on this planet and be done with all of them in only 47 minutes. This implies the Bringloidi don't have the emotional maturity as the stuffy clones. Riker didn't come up with the idea, so made a silly comment so he could be heard. Granger calls Picard out on his BS. Odell calls Granger a blatherskite. How did they get away with saying this on 80s TV? Two things you never learn. How many clones live on the planet now? And do they also have Irish descent? Granger says he's descended from the third baseman. In reality, the Bringloidi are much more fun to hang around with despite the racial profiling. which was probably thrown overboard just to show how stuffy the Mariposans really are. And now Odell has to explain the birds and the bees to Granger. 300 years and no sex. That's really not something to be proud of. Dr. Pulaski says the women get to sleep around. Wait, didn't she also have 3 husbands? Odell says, yeah, I think I could handle that, while Dr. Pulaski says, you know it's the women that are going to do all the hard work. Odell says, Christmas time is here and I get to unwrap 3 different girls. I don't think he's got it quite right. Picard is thinking, this is going to be the weirdest end of day report I've ever filled out. Granger's thinking, I've never seen a pregnant woman or a baby goat before. That's so cool. Now he's thinking, how does this wheel turn if it's not plugged into anything? Brenda comes over and blames the patriarchy for all her problems. Of course, they actually did make the decisions this time, didn't they? Now she says she doesn't want to be Eve, but wait a second. This happened in less than an hour after she met the first officer, and now she's going after Granger. She's a bit of a two-faced gold digger herself, isn't she? Oh damn, we called her out. And now she likes the idea of 3 husbands? Should we tell her she only gets one of them at a time and not all 3 at once? So, who were the colonists? John DeVries has 60 screen credits, including Miami Vice, Law and Order, and several soap operas. Barry Ingham, who's no longer with us, was born in the UK and one of the few who has been on Star Trek and Doctor Who. Yeah! Along with stage acting, he has been on The A-Team, My Partner the Ghost, and Voyagers. Rosalind Landor, also born in the UK, studied ballet and has a career recording audiobooks. She has been on Matlock, MacGyver, and several cartoon voices. Up the Long Ladder, which gets criticized, really does cover a lot of ground. So which one show is more insensitive? This one or Code of Honor? Up the Long Ladder gets a score of 61%. Thanks for viewing. Be sure to leave comments below, click that like button, the share button, and that subscribe button, and I'll see you again real soon.